there. Welcome to Cageless, a conversation podcast about experiential wisdom and personal hope. I'm Jenni Johnson. I'm a writer, and I'm asking experts, thought leaders, and my friends to share their knowledge and tools on how they found freedom. Welcome to Season 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cageless. Today, our guest is the founder of Pool House New York, a lifestyle brand that focuses on art, mental health, and wellness. He's a writer and a poet. He obtains a JD from Columbia Law School and a BA from the University of San Diego. Holy heck, what an intro.
Thank you.
This is my friend Andrew. Hi, Andrew. How are you today?
Good. How's it going with you, Jenni?
Great. It's so great. Where are you right now?
Yeah, I'm in sunny California, Los Angeles to be specific. I moved back out here, born and raised in Los Angeles, then went to law school, obviously, in New York, worked as an attorney out there for a while, started Pool House New York when I was there, and then slowly gravitated more back towards LA, where I'm from.
Yes, as so many of us do. It's like, so many people are like, I'm never going to go home, or I don't want to end up, and it's like, so much of the time we end up back there. But
Right.
cool. So that was a little bit of an overview. Andrew and I actually met as a lot of my friends lately have been, in the magical world of TikTok. So shockingly enough, Andrew, how did you get into that landscape?
In in the beginning, so when I left law, I didn't have too much of a concrete plan. I was saved up a lot of money. I went in with the idea that I wasn't going to be an attorney forever. So I was
Mm,
always like working on business ideas or some kind of thing to pivot out of law when I was in law school and as an attorney. And so I gave myself a runway to try to figure it out for like the first year. And so went about starting a business, and really the only way to start a business is in today's world. You got to get on social media. You got to figure out how to market that unless you have a bunch of money to pay for ads. And so I learned that landscape for a while
mm,
and just figured out what I could offer the world besides law, because I knew that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I made the decision actually not even to renew my license. I was just doubling down on the fact that I felt the urge to do something else, and I just was trying to figure out what could I offer the world,
yeah.
and testing all of that on social media, because I was trying to figure out, what do I want to make, what am I passionate about, but also what resonates with people, because I think that's where we find our like real purpose in life. That's where we find real satisfaction, because we're social beings. We can't just do things for ourselves. I think it's that it's that finding that crossroad between what lights our fire and then lights other people's fires, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so backtracking just like a little bit, because anyone, I will for sure be able to link all of Andrew's work, but your talent is just so loud. I'm curious as to how the heck you got into something so stoic as law. Was that like a dream as a kid?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, I'm Middle Eastern, and so the um, the uh, the story pretty much, or the way that you're raised, is that pretty much all of the males are supposed to become doctors. And so I went to undergrad with the impression of becoming a physician eventually,
Mm,
did all my pre-med classes. And then towards the end, I just came to the realization that I just really do not want to become a doctor. And I
mm-hmm.
just didn't want to live a life just because of what other people were thinking. And so I was actually the very first male in my family not to become a doctor.
No way.
And yeah, it was a big decision. I have to give my parents a lot of credit too, because they were also the only parents in our entire family who was willing to let one of their kids not do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Um, and then I gave myself a year before I went to law school, just to, again, to figure out what I what I wanted to do. I worked at some technology companies in San Diego and LA, and then I always thought like becoming a lawyer sounded like an interesting profession, and But growing up, everyone told me, "Oh, lawyers, there's so many of them. You can't really become a successful lawyer." That was the story in my family actually, and
Mm.
I would just said, "I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna try to get into the best law school I can get into,
Mhm.
and see what I can do with it because I think it's interesting. I actually think the practice of law is very fascinating. It's very analytical, it's logical, it's very philosophical in a way too. And I fell in love with law in school, but then as I started working as an attorney, I realized it's not as theoretical, it's not as intellectually stimulating the practice of it. A lot
Mm.
of this stuff is kind of set in stone. There could have been a life where I would have been an attorney, but
Yeah.
as you can probably tell, a lot of things in my life, I felt a lot of pressure to be a certain person, right?
Mhm.
Whether it was to become a doctor, whether it was to impress people by going to a certain law school. And then when I was in law school, I felt like, oh, I had to work at the best law firm because when you're at Columbia, it's kind of like high school in a way because everybody is so focused on your law firm ranking and then you're all wearing sweaters based on, oh yeah, I'm at this law firm, blah blah blah, and you have like these little backpacks and it's very clicky in that respect. So in the beginning I was really swayed to go to the best law firm I could get into without taking into account what practice group I was getting into,
Yeah.
and got into a practice group that I just wasn't interested in. My law firm was amazing, though, I have to say. Very, very nice people, but it just wasn't for me and
Right.
had to come to that conclusion. What was the question again? Sorry, I feel like I got a little off
No, that
topic.
was great. I asked like how you got into law and like because
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems like such an interesting, like I said, two very opposite ends of vocation. Can you tell me, you said that how you were raised was very much, it didn't really seem like you had a choice in terms of a job or a career. What were you, I'm curious as to what you were like as a kid because I meet you now and you seem like just this like super smart, empathetic, peaceful presence that I've literally never met in real life. But through a screen, this is what I'm taking in. What were you like as a kid?
I was really into the arts. I think that there was always like an inner artist there,
Hmm.
but there wasn't any artists in my family, so I never thought that would be an actual profession. There was no one in
Right.
the the film industry. There's no one in the music industry. There was just no artists, and so there was
Hmm.
no good examples. And so I never thought that that was a path for me.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was into drawing. I was into like music, skateboarding, especially filmmaking for like, the skateboarding I was doing with my friends,
Mm.
making even music. I remember in college, like making house music. I was really into that. So there was always this creative impetus inside of me, I think, and
Hmm.
it just took a while for me to have the courage to pursue it.
Absolutely. And sometimes I've also noted that a lot of the people that I've connected with, and even like people that I look up to, it's not always a super linear line to like finding what you are meant to do. I know so many
Hmm.
people that have like, what was it? How long did like Oprah Winfrey, how long was she not Oprah Winfrey? Like, how
Right.
long was Mark Cuban like not Mark Cuban? People that are really good at what they do, you kind of have to troubleshoot a lot, and that takes a lot
Hmm.
of, I think, self-reflection and a lot of
Hmm.
self-acceptance, which actually Andrew had posted this today and it just, oh my goodness, it spoke to my soul. He said, self acceptance is challenging because you are constantly changing. There's a new person to accept every morning. This is scary because you have no idea whether the people in your life will love the new you. And this is where the problem lies. It is grounded in the inability to accept change. What have you had to accept about yourself to become who the person that you are today?
When I was writing that, especially, because I feel like I've changed so much over the years, especially with like relationships and putting on this certain facade that okay, I'm this person, this corporate person who's like into who's on Wall Street, who's into finance and making a bunch of money and impressing a bunch of people, and then real and going out at night and and trying to impress people or meet people that way,
Mm.
and just realizing that maybe I'm not that person. Maybe I like to go to bed early and wake up and read in the morning, you know?
Right. Right.
And that took me a long time to, like, I knew it and I accepted it, but to actually have the impetus to be confident enough to turn down those invitations to pursue the life that I wanted, which meant I had to give up some things, and
Right.
accepting the fact that you can't be everything.
Mm-mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And by saying no to some things, you're giving value to the things that you do. That's
Mm-hmm.
why they're important.
Yeah.
It's like nothing would matter if you could do everything.
That's so, so true. And especially, this can happen at any age, but especially in your 20s, I have noted that this treadmill of success and like wanting to be really, really good at something and then like wearing that something as an identity. And it's just,
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but it really hasn't served me as a person. I personally studied a couple of different things. I've worked in a couple of different vocations, and I'm just 26. And it's like, there I used to really really wear that as like a failure complex. But I was
Hmm.
having a conversation with my dad over Christmas break about how like failure can only exist if you have an idea of success. So
Hmm.
you kind of have to figure out what success is to you. And
Hmm.
I think that if, okay, COVID's already brought up what we're like 12 minutes in. If the past couple of years of, really really hardness in every single way, like everyone has struggled in some sort of way, whether that is, loss of a loved one, loss of yourself, loss of your job, whatever that
Yeah.
is, it's so important to take a look at yourself and be like, what do I want? And like, who is this person that I'm creating becoming, and what virtues do they follow? What values do they have? Because I'm
Hmm.
so much the same way. I for the longest time was like, yeah, I'll go out, or like, yeah, I'll do these kind of things. And the like little inner me is like, can we just please go put on our pajamas and like go to bed? But it's quite countercultural. And this is not
Hmm.
to say that if you do like to be super extroverted and you are like the Wall Street guy, please be that person, because like there's only one you in this universe, right? Like there's
Hmm.
only like you can only take up the space that you've been allotted. So it's
Hmm.
super cool, and I love getting to watch you online interact, especially with everyone who kind of feels the same way. That I've found so much camaraderie myself in people that are like, "Oh, wait, me too," but I just like didn't want to say it, but like, yeah, so much same, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what's so cool about the internet is that you're able to, me and you were able to have a conversation and we're not in the same place. Like, what are the odds that you're gonna be physically located next to people who share similar mindset to you?
Mhm.
Like, that's why I felt so caged in college and in
Yeah.
high school, because it was just people who was in my physical proximity. But
Mhm.
now with social media, we can connect with so many more people who actually maybe embody more of the things that we want to embody.
Right. Absolutely. You in the quote that we had just read off, you had mentioned about how the people in your life obviously are really important. You are the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Who are the people in your life that you do physically get to see, that you feel like actually like truly know you and accept you? And I mean, is that important to you to have those kind of people around?
100%. I think like the biggest two would be my mom and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the past 2 years, our bonds have just become so much deeper. Like in the beginning, I'll be honest, it was hard. Our relationship wasn't the best. We fought a lot, but then, and especially me coming from New York, and I feel like so many people experience this. You get into meditation or mindfulness, or you read a bunch of books, and you feel like you're this peaceful person right now. And then
Mm-hmm.
you go back to your family and you feel like you're going backwards.
It's a whole
And it's one
thing.
of the most, it's a whole thing. And it's one of the most frustrating things because you want them to change with you. But what I realize is that you can't force people, and that's just going to irritate you more. You can't force them to change, but by being that person, by being around them and by being this new person, they're slowly going to like change with you. They're going to be inspired by you without you even doing anything purposefully. Like I feel
Right.
like my mom and my dad have changed so much these past 2 years since I've moved back. Not saying
Yeah.
I was the only reason, but I feel like it was like a teamwork effort. We all three kind of helped each other
Mm-hmm.
grow without
Yes.
having, yeah.
Yes. Oh, and heavy is the head. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure how versed you are in like generational trauma or, generate anything that is like generational in terms of things that aren't good for you. But the work that you've done, you're choosing to do of like learning about emotional health, mental health, physical health, all of these different types of health. This has been going on since the beginning of your lineage, right? So if like there's any toxic part of you, you bleed the same blood as your parents. So obviously, they're probably going to be feeling a lot of the things that you are wanting to work on as well. I've, kind of found the same way that leading by example is just it's just first of all, it's easier because you don't have to like sit on a or like stand on a soapbox and be like, these are the things that I've learned and like you need to learn these things too because they want freedom just as much as you do. But like
Hmm.
you're the one that's like kind of leading the way, which is an interesting thing because like what has your relationship so you're saying that your relationship has gotten better with your parents. How has that kind of shifted from like the parent to the friend? Has
Yeah.
that been really difficult?
It's been really natural, to be honest. It's kind of
Mm,
just happened without even like trying. It's just I mean, it's hard too because your parents are always going to think of you as as their kid,
mm,
but once you just once they I mean, eventually they're going to realize as long as you mature yourself, as long as you're putting in the work to become a more mature person, it's hard not to see that from the
yeah.
parents' end, I think.
Yeah.
And then it slowly becomes that friendship just naturally.
Right. Absolutely. So we're talking about practices and influence. Andrew, what are a couple of the things that if you could give me a couple of the things that have really helped you in this growth journey of yours? If they're books, if they're podcasts, if they're practices, what's kind of your what was the launching pad?
Yeah, the very first launching pad probably would have been meditation when I was a lawyer.
Mm,
And for the longest time I put it off because I thought it was going to take my edge off. Like I didn't need meditation.
mm,
Lawyers don't need it, you know.
mm-hmm.
But then I don't even know who was the person that convinced me, but I just heard this one story of this investment banker who was going through this very like lonely kind of like lost time in his life where he just didn't have any motivation to do the work he was doing and he
Mm,
just felt like he was washing through life, and I'm like, that's how I feel. And he said that meditation really helped him, so I thought, okay, what is I don't
what's
have anything
this?
to lose, so I might as well try it. And then practiced, went on YouTube, listened to some podcast, got recommended some teachers, and found a couple of them where their voices resonated with me. And I think it's important. There isn't
Hmm.
one, if I tell you who I like, it's not necessarily the best one for you. And I think it's
Right.
important to find someone whose voice and tonality and cadence resonates with you.
That's so good.
Yeah, and I found a couple of those voices, and they helped me in the beginning, and I think it's really important in the sense that you don't constantly need new books. You don't need a new meditation. For me personally, I read some of the same books constantly. Listen to some of the same podcasts over and over again, and I
Mm,
find myself learning so much each time. Couple voices, I guess, that have really helped me. David White probably had one of the most like profound impacts on me. He's this
mm,
Irish poet and philosopher,
mm-hmm.
and his voice it was always just so so magical and so inspiring. And I feel like my voice is kind of like a medley of him and Neil Gaiman. Those are probably the two voices that resonate the most with me.
Good
There's
ones.
something about it. Yeah, there's something about both of them, and I'm inspired by the way they talk. And in the beginning, when you try to find your voice, so often you're like, oh, what do I want to say? And I think a lot of the time you only find your voice after sounding like other people. So like I read David White's books and Neil Gaiman's books over and
Mm,
over again and tried to figure out how did they write things? How are they talking? Like what was the cadence? When did they stop talking?
mm,
When did they repeat things? And eventually I don't read their work too much anymore. I feel like it's just kind of a part of me now.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
when you come into your own, you stop relying on those voices and you just there it comes from a different place.
Right, right. Which I know that I can speak on behalf of a lot of people that you are a great voice on so many people's
Thank you.
screens and bookshelves that it's really, really important to, as you said, find people, find thought leaders, find authors, find people that they can definitely challenge you, but also don't lead you in the way that you that like goes against the grain of your soul, right? Like
Yeah.
I am probably not going to listen to someone like super hyper one side or the other, or someone that's like led by hate, or someone that
hmm
doesn't have a great track record. So I think that it's so important to know what kind of filter that you are running, what
hmm
kind of intelligence and like things that you're wanting to listen to, because what you listen to and what you watch has more impact than I think young people really understand.
hmm
Because if you just start to take note of like, how did I feel after I watched that? Or like, how did I feel even after I read that? Or after I hung out with this specific person? And having
hmm
that like emotional and like mental capability to be like, this is kind of going against me, or like this is making
hmm
me feel better. Your audience is quite catered towards I love to call them zillennials, so like between Gen Z and like millennial, so like 20s 30s, we're all just trying to figure it out here.
hmm
Why is it important to you that we are figuring it out in terms of like hope, because your message is so catered towards like light versus dark? Why is that
hmm
important to you?
I think especially lately with this generation, I see a lot of people going into like especially like philosophy, but like especially like nihilism, thinking like, oh, nothing really matters.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to have hope and some kind of purpose behind the things you do because it allows you to persevere. Like if you think
Mhm.
that this is going to make you stronger, then it will make you stronger. Like if you think that there's like a lesson to be learned from this, that you're going to grow from it, then that will happen.
Yeah.
And unless you have that hope, I don't think you're not as capable as getting to like leaving this world better than you found it. And I think it's so important that we try to do that. I feel like everyone wants that goal, obviously,
Mhm.
and it's like, what's the best way to get there? Should
Yeah.
we think that nothing matters, or maybe the other way, which I kind of lean more
Right.
towards?
Absolutely.
And
And yeah, no, I think that it's really cool to have a voice, into the abyss that's like not agnostic, because it's
mm,
so I don't know about you, but I'm like tired of like cool culture. Like I don't want to be
yeah,
cool. Like I want to be
I
myself.
know. It's such an important distinction. I know for the longest time I wanted to be cool, but I realized it's not cool to be cool.
No, it's not cool. In fact, I think it's really boring because,
hmm
I can only speak for myself, not for like anyone at large, but I wore this mask for so long, especially growing up where I did, very different from Los Angeles, but it was like, I'm going to make all of these check marks. Like being from the South, it was like, you're supposed to, have a family. You're supposed to be, practice this certain kind of faith. You're supposed to look this certain way. And it's so much easier to just continue to follow that script instead of being someone who breaks it. But I have
hmm
also found that when you break the script, it gives other people permission to break their script too. And
hmm
when you can break those things up, how much more this sounds so like woo woo, but like how much more beautiful is the world? Like when because if we all looked the same, no one, first of all, it
hmm
wouldn't be any fun. Second of all, I feel like it would really mess up like the ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And I'm such an advocate for obviously hope and light and things that have meaning. Um, is there anything that you have noted like in our generation other than this like very like nihilistic agnostic note that you like just really don't agree with? Like do you have any like deep disagreements? Because I know I see so much stuff on TikTok that I'm
Yeah.
like, why did you
So
say
much.
that?
Like, I think that there's this one, like, it's hard to put this into words, but there's so many people who just think that everything's from within, right? Like
Mm,
you only owe something to yourself,
mm.
and they forget the other half. It's like we're social creatures. You got to also think about other people's
Mm,
opinions. And
yes.
not opinions, but like about like what kind of impact you're having on them, and
Mm,
be courteous to them. Don't live your whole life based on what other people think, but you have to care about other people too.
mhm,
And that there's this one thing that I don't know if you've noticed. I've talked to a couple of my friends about it, but I noticed with a lot of younger people, the fact that they just like don't respond to things for like weeks on end, and then randomly will like text you or like message you. I'm like, this isn't like, first of all, 10 business days, like that's not even okay in business. Like, and it comes from this thing where I don't know, I feel like a lot of the messaging too, especially in the people who I think talk about like the mindfulness or meditation very one-sidedly, they always say everything's from within, right? Like everything you need is inside of you. But I think people are also a reflection of you. Your world is a reflection of you, and
mhm.
you have to respect that.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like I call it like selfie culture, like the fact that it's 2022 and we have a term called selfie. Everything is about yourself. And I think that it has to come from a place of humility to be able to say, actually, I don't know the answer to that, but I think I know someone who
Hmm.
does. And I think I'm going to have the courage to be able to ask that question. I have also
Yeah.
noticed with a lot of I have a range of friends, or at least I try to, in terms of age and gender identity and race and class. And a lot of my younger friends, at least, very much take on this, I can change the world. Like, I'm superwoman, I'm Superman. I don't need help from anyone. I don't need
Hmm.
reciprocation from this relationship. I don't need help in this area. And I really don't know when it got cool to not ask for help, because I know
Right.
that I'm absolutely guilty of this. Like, I'm not pointing the finger, but it is doesn't it just make more sense like when we can help one another?
Hmm. That was one of the hardest things for me to learn, especially when I left law. I was so adamant that I could do everything on my own, and
Mm,
it held me back for so long. And once I reached out and brought someone else onto my team, like I actually was able to accomplish things.
mm-hmm.
Like,
Isn't it crazy?
yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, it seems obvious now, but I think you really need to like experience what it's like to do everything on your own, then realize you can't do it.
Yep.
Because it seems obvious now, but I think a lot of things you really need to, the truths are buried so deep inside of us, and we really need to just like chip away at all the dirt and
Right.
the junk that's covering it up, I think.
Right. And I think that especially in like our 20s and 30s, it's like experiential knowledge can really only exist out of hard experiences and like learning the hard
Hmm.
way, because like I've burnt my hand on the same stove several different times, but it just takes like, oh, the seventh
Hmm.
time, oh, something like really clicked in me maybe to not keep doing that.
Yeah.
Which is, as you had mentioned, working as an attorney and being able to be like, maybe I need some help. You built Pool House, which anyone who's listening to this has probably looked into or seen. If I had to guess, if not, I'm giving you like your entire afternoon. Like you're gonna go scroll through his entire Instagram and TikTok. What gave you the I get, yeah, what gave you the like launching pad to start Pool House, and did you do it alone?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, so in the very beginning, I got the Instagram handle when I was in law school, and it was always the idea to create this place where creatives in like New York City could come together and meet each other and hang out without having to go to a club. That was always like the original concept.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had a partner with that, and we just had different ideas, and so it dissipated. And I still had the handle, and it really resonated with me, the name,
Mm-hmm.
because I was into meditation and this concept of yin and yang. And for me, the name was always kind of this way to blend California and New York without actually saying California and New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been a running theme, yin and yang with everything I write about. You can't have like the good days without the bad days. You can't
Mm-hmm.
have love without the inevitable heartbreak. And and for a long time, yeah, I tried to do it on my own because of the first experience of it not coming together. But you can't hold yourself back just because of something that didn't work out in the past, right? You can't write that off completely as something that's not for you just from one or two or even three experiences.
That's right.
Yeah, you have to be open to the fact that people can change and that you changed, and maybe it could be a better time. And being open to second chances, I think,
Right.
is really important.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, can we cancel culture? That is what I would love
Yeah.
to do. It's like, when did we get to the
Uh-huh.
point where like forgiveness is just non-existent? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
giving people chances. And I do think we can take this with a grain of salt. I do believe that abuse can be perpetualized because of chances. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms that aren't as fierce, it's really okay, I think, first of all, to practice second chances with yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
when you get that sense of self and that sense of acceptance, then you can start to kind of
Mm-hmm.
reciprocate that with other people. I love that you decided to make, this about like New York and LA, like yin and yang. What do you feel like has been the most difficult subject to learn, the hot and the
Mm-hmm.
cold from?
There's a lot of things. The first one probably that's coming to mind, and this is something that I've been working on lately. I signed up for an acting class because I felt like it would kind of help me become.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've been working on the most is my tendency to people please. Because
Mm.
growing up, I always was under the notion that I needed everybody to like me.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you never wanted to upset anyone in the business world, and especially attorneys. My goodness.
Yeah.
That is the one where no one will ever say anything bad about anybody.
Mm.
And been really trying to unlearn that while at the same time being considerate of people and
Yeah.
not being callous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's really difficult to find like softness and hardness and like being able to look into yourself but then also look into other people, or like
Hmm.
you had also mentioned, like love and heartbreak, which I really thought
Oh, that
that you
one.
were going to say love and hate. But I love that you drew the conclusion of love and heartbreak, because I
Hmm.
kind of don't think that love and hate have to exist in conjunction to one another,
Hmm.
because heartbreak itself feels like hate. It feels terrible for anyone who hasn't had
Yeah.
their heart broken. Buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But what has been the most difficult lesson that you've learned in terms of love and heartbreak?
I mean, just realizing that there is no worthwhile life without heartbreak.
Mm.
Like whether the phrase is it's better to have loved than to have never loved at all. But I think what heartbreak is, it's just the fact that you love something so much and you having to let it go. And so it's coming from like the best place. Like this most painful place is also coming from the best place.
Mm.
And you have to let go of everything. Like everything we do is finite. Like every time we hang out with someone, spend time with a loved one, that's one less time we're gonna hang out with that person. Yeah, and just remembering that, that is heartbreaking, and it's hard to make yourself vulnerable to really care about people,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that they're gonna, whether you're in a relationship and you're breaking up with someone, or whether it's a family member that eventually passes, you gotta you gotta realize that you can't like not like fall in love with that person and the experiences and the moments with them, just because you're afraid of getting your heart broken at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I know I have definitely learned that lesson the hard way being a product of this generation. Like
Hmm.
we were talking about, it's cool like not to care. It's like oh, it's the norm to not communicate. It's the norm to play it cool. But I'm
Hmm.
kind of tired of it because I have so much love in my chest and like emotions
Yeah.
and not just love. Like you're allowed to express frustration. Like you are allowed to express joy. You are
Mm.
allowed to express anything because, as I believe Glennon Doyle says it, the goal isn't to feel good all of the time. The
Hmm.
goal is to feel everything. And
Yeah.
I think that I'm not sure if it's like maybe you can help me out on this. If it's like a Buddhist thought of like the metaphor of like the butterfly that like any
Hmm.
person, place, situation that like you are encountering is like a butterfly that like lands on your hand, and if you close it, it's crushed, right? Like you just broke the butterfly and you can't have it anymore. But like keeping it open and like giving life the opportunity to come and go, you just
Hmm.
I have personally found so much more freedom in living that way.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I kind of, when you like asked me beforehand about like emotional awareness, that's one of the things that I've learned the most over the years is the
Mm.
fact that you shouldn't avoid the emotions, whether it's anger or sadness. You should let yourself experience it and then move forward. I think another important thing is just to realize that because it's a hard balance, because some people they'll get lost in it and they'll become consumed in the suffering, the pain, and you got
Mm.
to realize, okay, I don't want to not feel it. I'm going to allow myself to feel it, but I also need to have the impetus to move forward and
Yeah.
act, because I think a lot of the times action is the first step to feeling better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another reason, why it's really important to have people around that want to lift you up, not people that want
Hmm.
to push you down or push you in a direction that you're not really wanting to go in. I wonder, what does that kind of freedom mean to you? Like
Oh,
what is your definition of emotional freedom?
I'm going to be honest. My answer is a little contradictory, but I think real freedom is the ability to give up that freedom,
Mm,
because when I grew up, I studied abroad in a bunch of places. I moved around a lot, whether it was to San Diego or to New York, or studying abroad in Turkey, or going on like semester at sea. And what I realized as I got older is that it's a lonely life to be that free and to be traveling everywhere. And as I gotten older, I kind of want to give up that freedom. I want
mm,
to have some roots here,
mhm,
okay, to develop a community that will make it hard to leave. And in the grand scheme of things, maybe that looks a little less free, but it's the fact that I had the freedom to give it up in that respect, to create certain bonds that I don't want to just freely throw away. I
right.
think that's the the greatest thing that we could do with, or the most fulfilling thing we could do with our freedom.
That's so true. It's all about choice. It's all about freedom of the choice. And I think that
Hmm.
I love that you've experienced so much in your life. So you have very much been able to go and try and see, and then also kind of, you can like framework your life however you want. Like I feel like that's kind of what people our age are needing the permission slip for. It's like, oh no, honey, if you like want to stay in your hometown and like you'd like to do this and you'd like to
Hmm.
do all of the things that like your parents or whoever the culture like whatever has wanted you to do it. Just also be aware that you have other options. Like choose a
Hmm.
life that's like catered towards what your soul is like wanting and like yearning
Hmm.
for, because that's what being caged in is. I think that that you can really be suppressed to a point where you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, who am I? Because like I
Hmm.
knew who I like wanted to be when I was like 5, because they ask you, what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be an astronaut. Or, oh, I want to be the president of the United States. Or, oh, like I want to be a baker. All of these things that we had at the baseline of who we were can just get like bombarded, because I really think that you're the product of the people and the places that you've been. So just having the opportunity to give yourself permission to choose wisely, and even if
Hmm.
you don't choose wisely, if if the good Lord blesses you with another day to wake up, it's another day to start. Like it's another day to try something new.
Hmm.
And I think that you've done such a great job at that. Pool House, I know for me at least, like it's so important to put things on your screen, especially when we have these devices attached to our hands most of the time. It's really important to put things that speak life into you and like speak
Hmm.
hope and goodness. And so thank you. Like I'll just take this opportunity to say thank you for running Pool House and creating a platform and collective in a community for people who don't necessarily have that in their backyard.
You're so welcome. Yeah, I mean, it's my pleasure sharing this stuff. I'm happy that it resonates with people. That's always the most fulfilling part of it. The fact that you're connecting with somebody else, the fact that
Mm.
somebody else, you realizing that someone else shares the same opinions as you is the coolest thing.
Isn't it? It's like because there is so much camaraderie in like, oh, I hate this person. Like, yeah, I hate them too. Or like, oh, I dislike this. But I just think it's so much stronger to not, don't share your pet peeves, like, share your loves. Like, what's stronger
Yeah.
than that? Um,
Hmm.
so, Andrew, as we are coming to a close with our time together, a question that we ask on the Cageless podcast is if you could tell your younger self anything, if you were in the room with
Hmm.
younger Andrew today, what would you tell him?
I think that's a really great question. And I mean, everything I say, there's always like, there's so many, I think life is a contradiction.
Hmm.
So what I'm going to say right now, there are things I would want to tell him because there are things that I do regret. But at the same time, I realized that the younger me needed to make those mistakes, and there's probably no other way he would have made them, right? Like even if I became an artist from the beginning, like after high school, let's say, I guarantee that I would have quit being an artist and then gone into the corporate world because I would have thought it was easier, and
That's right.
then realized, oh wait, actually, the creative world is better for me. I'm going to go back to that.
Mm.
So, but even with that in mind, I think it's important to admit the mistakes you've made and to admit that you wish you could have done it differently so you can move forward.
Yeah,
And what I always like think about this is like because people there's so often people say I don't have any regrets in my life,
I
and
do.
as
I
I know
do.
I do there's nothing wrong with that. Like
No.
imagine the doctor or the lawyer who didn't spend time with his kid growing up, and
Mm.
like it feels really bad about that and wishes he could go back. Do you think that person should have no regrets, or maybe by admitting that you wish things could have been differently, maybe he can spend a bit more time with his son and then his grandchild, and try to really
Yeah.
savor those moments. And unless you admit that you made a mistake and you wish it could have been differently, I think it's hard to make the future better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with that in mind, I would want to tell younger me to follow your intuition, to follow your heart, and to not be so adamant about following a specific path, about impressing certain people. Not that people's opinions doesn't matter because we're social creatures, but just having the courage to follow your intuition. But with that in mind, I know that the only way to learn that is by not following
Mm-hmm.
your intuition
Mm-hmm.
and seeing where that leads you.
Mm-hmm. Live your life and you will find out.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew. Well, thank you so much. What a fruitful conversation we got to have today. Why don't you give us your pitch? Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah. So on Instagram and on TikTok, Pool House New York. And then I have a newsletter, loveandrew.poolhousenewyork.com, and a podcast, yeah, Figuring Out with Andrew on
Mm-hmm.
Spotify and Apple.
Yes. Which like please do all of those things. He also you didn't mention this, but you also have like an advice column on your on like attached
Yeah.
to your Substack, which is so good and I highly
Oh, thank
recommend
you.
that. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, of course. Thank you, Andrew, for taking time to talk to me and allow others to listen. And everyone who's listening, we appreciate you. We love you, and we'll see you next time on Cageless. If you enjoyed or learned anything from today's episode, I want to hear from you. Shoot me a text or call to 903 871 5092. It's completely free and anonymous if you choose. You can also shoot me an Instagram DM, that's in the show notes, or follow along with the Cageless newsletter. And don't forget to be kind to yourself today.